We'll go now to Victor. Victor, questions for you. How do you make the difference through what you're doing in the medical field, and how do you see the role of NGOs creating peace in the Middle East?
Thanks so much. Good morning to all. Since we have no translation, I'm going to use English. First of all, thank God for the opportunity. We have translation now? Okay, English, okay. And I'm very optimistic about the enormous and big opportunity we have in front of us, that it's open today and actually it's continued today. I will thank a lot our president, my president, Mr. Fernandez, and his wife for being the engine, the spark of this initiative. I think the countries of the world are very thankful and praise a lot your role as a mediator, as unifier to the higher causes, and to make this planet that we cohabitate a better world. You are part of this unification in much of our problems. As a doctor and a humanist, I think the most important message or function in a panel like this is to motivate and to urge that civil societies and humanism is an important portion and part of the solution of problems in the world. As long as we see people and we make people better, countries are going to be better and the world is going to be better. As when you have a cancer, if you fix a cell, if you make one cell better, this will stop another cell for getting worse or propagate the cancer. That's what you do with people also. When you help one person, the surrounding of that person, it's better itself. You can help a country by alleviating the environmental, the circumstances, but I believe that the best way of making a country better and for the best aligning two countries is making the people better and helping those people to feel that inside of them there is a possibility of hope, a choice of becoming part of a society. In that part of the world, a lot of persons don't feel that they are part of a society. They feel neglected every day. They feel deprived every day. And you cannot feel good with yourself when you're being deprived and neglected every day. I think when an opportunity like this comes about, it is important for us, the civil society, to remember that it's not the responsibility of our leaders alone to do this. Civil society has a role, a very important role, in letting our leaders know that they're not doing things right, and helping our friends, helping our brothers, and making them a better human. I think no longer we can use history and the past and the failure of previous interactions as a justification for an ongoing of the suffering. I think the possibility that arises today is that by changing today, not using the past as an excuse, not using tragedies in the past, not using wars in the past, not using that yesterday I was your enemy, or yesterday I beat you in a war, that letting people know that this is in the past and that we have a today that is comprised by this suffering that these people are living today, and that by alleviating that suffering, then those people there will not feel that the past is always with them, that they are constantly remembering that yesterday someone was killed, that today I don't have water, and today I don't have a school to go. And it is the role of the civil society to become an important part of this. Leaders and political leaders, most of the time, have to deal in much higher issue. It's easier for civil society to deal with people, to deal with the human touch, and to get to people if we approach the issue in the right way. Work, education, health, the feeling of being able to talk, to walk, to communicate, the feeling that there's no reason to fear another human being. It is important for human beings to conquer hate and to conquer mistrust. I will never trust someone that I will call a terrorist. So as long as you keep bringing the image that a portion of the world is a terrorist, that a portion of another part of the world is not, or I am better than some person, there's no better or worse. Humans are equal. No humans have a higher privilege than another human. And if we keep on bringing the image that my neighbor is a terrorist, that my neighbor can do something harm to me, if we keep on selling this image to the world, the society will not feel the need to become a part of this issue. I think as a part of many efforts of relief in many countries, when I lifted up a kid in Haiti that had broken legs, that was burned all over, and as in other parts of the world, I believe that in this part of the world, there are kids, there are people by their names that need help. And we have to address the personal problem, the people issue. Make the life of one person better today, and that person today is no longer part of a chain that is to communicate hate and to perpetuate hate. I think the civil society, and I praise the work that Siali was doing, that he has organized all the charities for Palestine. The civil society has to see as a duty, as a responsibility, the need of this area in the world, as any other in the world. There are no Palestinians, there are no Israelis there, even though they are a part of that war. There are humans in suffering that need help, and they need to be given the tools so hate is not perpetuated. I believe that as long as we don't keep on insulting each other and seeing each other as enemies and with mistrust, and by changing that, the civil society has the goal, because this is the majority. The majority of people, 80% of the population of these countries, more than that maybe, believe and cohabitate every day. And even though they are imposed this fear by the history, by the word, by the media, they cohabitate. And most of the days we have a good day. And I mean, or a normal day, not for those who are in suffer. My goal here, and not my goal, I would say is to motivate, to understand that suffering is an everyday issue there, and that as a part of the civil society, we must make the lives of those in suffering better, so they are not part of a chain of hate. Necessity is a bad forcer of things. When people are in necessity, when people are indeed, they are forced to do things that they don't want to do. And that's what should be stopped. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Victor. So Victor clearly sees that we have to engage people. We have to stop naming each other. We have to work in collaboration in order to make peace. And I totally agree with your simple and humble words. That's the way it can work. So let's go to Aldor. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. President. Hola and salam and shalom to you and to everyone here. I was introduced as a social worker, and I need to say that I'm a social worker both by profession and by conviction. So this is my starting point here. The paradigm that is the backbone of my work as a social worker is the ecosystemic framework, which connects the individual to the macro level of society, to laws, to norms, to cultures, and policies, and thus also to historical processes such as war and peace, as we are dealing with now. And therefore, from that paradigm, I'm speaking about the terms where each person is affected by all events, all historical events, and each society is affected by the way people experience that, as you've just said. But I would like to mention that when we speak about society, we actually tend to stereotype people. When we say Dominicians or Egyptians or Americans or Israelis or Palestinians, we're actually stereotyping. And what I wish to do here is speak of some aspects of Israeli society which I think should be considered, and I think it's important that both Palestinians and everyone else involved in what's going on should be aware of. And I would like to learn always more and more about the complexities of Palestinian society as well. As far as Israeli society, of course, I wouldn't and shouldn't attempt to speak in the name of the Palestinian citizens of Israel. But I do want to mention some aspects of the interface between the Jewish society of Israel and the Palestinian citizens of Israel. And I would like to do that by giving some examples. One, Galina Vroman is the name of a woman who, together with her husband, both Israeli Jews, have been living in the Arab town of Shafa'am, and I hope I say it correctly, because it's also known as Shfar'am. They've been living there for the last 2 years, and they are the only Jews in a town of 40,000 people, most of whom are Muslims. And there are some Christian Jews, few Bedouin families. They went there because they wanted to learn more about, they wanted to learn Arabic, the Arabic language, and they wanted to know more about the Palestinian and Israeli society. But actually, Galina is a strange bird. I mean, there are not many people that make that choice. And the question is why we, as Israeli Jewish citizens, not make a point of knowing more about our co-citizens, about our Palestinian co-citizens, about their language and the intricacies of their culture. My daughter decided to make such an effort, and my 9-year-old granddaughter goes to an Arab Jewish school in Kafr Qasem. She has Jewish and Arab friends, and she goes to parties in Binyamina or in Baka El Garbiya. She speaks, reads, and writes Arabic, and for her, this is a very natural setting. It all sounds great, except that it's not as simple as I've just presented it. First of all, there are only 4 such schools in the country, so that's like nothing. It's very, very small effort. And secondly, it's not a simple solution, because on the one hand, we celebrated beautifully Grandparents' Day, Hanukkah, Ramadan, that's easy. But when it came to Remembrance Day for Israeli soldiers, or for the Nakba Day, the school goes into a crisis of how to deal with those identity issues. So that also needs to be looked at. A third example is Osim Shalom, which is an organization of social workers. It means social workers for peace, but it also sounds in Hebrew, the sound of it is making peace. It's a very vital organization. It's co-chaired by a Palestinian and Arab citizen of Israel and Israeli Jewish social worker. And it does a lot of work on education, on mediation, on reconciliation, student education, conflict resolution, and much more. So these are 3 examples from a private initiative, an educational initiative, and a professional initiative, but there are many more. And still, as I say in Hebrew, it's like a drop in the sea. We need to know more about Palestinian society, and we feel that especially more about Palestinian society in the occupied territories, because I've really talked about Palestinian society in Israel. But then there's also the issue of the settlers. And again, when we say the settlers, we have an image of one group of people, but actually this is also more complex. And some of the settlers are ideological settlers, while others went there for different personal reasons. But we have to remember that these settlers also have, and here I'm trying to connect to what you said, Mr. Huberman, that some of the settlers have the same problems that we all have. I mean, you know, it's a human society. As a social worker responsible for social services, I worked for some years with some of the settlements in the West Bank. This was before 1993. And people were not talking as much about the removal of settlements, but some people were having a very, very tough time there. And would they live? No, they did not live. They stayed there. They stayed there because often they couldn't afford financially to move from the settlements to other places. Secondly, because they were afraid that if the time comes when the settlements are removed and they should be entitled to receive compensation, they will miss out on that opportunity. And thirdly, because they were very uncomfortable to be called traitors by their neighbors, which was, you know, to be pariah in their own society. 5 years ago, I was one of the initiators of an organization called Shuvi, which was an organization of women and some men who supported the disengagement from Gaza. And we were keen supporters of the disengagement. We thought Israel had no business of being there. We were supporting the two-state solution. We thought it would be a first, showing that settlements can be removed and we can move forward with that. We were also sick of seeing our sons or our friends' sons being killed in Gaza, where we thought we had no business of being, as I said. But Shuvi also means return, and we were calling the women to return back to Israel, to come back home, as we try to say. We're trying to reconnect on the one-to-one level with women of the settlements. And on that part, we failed. We did not succeed of making that contact for the reason I've just mentioned above, and that was a very painful failure as far as I'm concerned. So these are some subgroups in Israeli society, but also, of course, much more. There is the Orthodox society, who has a different way of life. There are the supporters of ideologies that live by ideologies in the settlements or in the cities and through the political parties. There are many young people who today feel very clueless and careless about what's going on, which is a different problem. They don't read newspapers. They don't know, what the news are. They are engrossed in their own personal agenda. There are also some young people who are extremely involved, like the group of young people in Sheikh Jarrah who are demonstrating constantly there together with the Palestinian people living in Sheikh Jarrah, and they are joined by very prominent people like the writer David Grossman and some university professors and others. These are all initiatives that grow within the country, and we have to look at them. The last point I would like to make is that if civil society wants to promote peace, it was mentioned yesterday that Arab leaders should come and speak to Israelis, that Israelis should speak to Arab, but I think we should focus on additional issues to the political ones. And I think that we should try to create more organizations connecting engineers who talk about engineering issues, medical doctors who discuss medical problems which are common to both societies, cultural events and sports events, not instead of the main issues, but together with, because that may help people connect better. It may also help people learn that the other is a real person with common interests that we can share and that we can work together. and thus support both public opinion and conflict resolution, and the human infrastructure supporting peace for the benefit of both people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dorate, very much. So Dorate sees that the civil society should promote peace by focusing on creating more bilateral opportunities through cultural, through sport events, through working together, medical doctors or economists or engineers, and so on. She also sees that image building is one of great importance to understanding the psychological impact in each society, whether it's the Israeli or the Palestinian or the Arab at large. Also talking about the role of interface and the importance of that in understanding one another. So before I go to Farida, I know that Nadia wanted to say something briefly before she gets on her plane. So Nadia is an NBC journalist, so Nadia, floor is yours.
Thank you. Like everybody else, I think I want to thank the President and the First Lady and your young son, actually, who I learned last night that his name is Omar, named after also my favorite actor, Omar Sharif. So here you are. I'm sorry I have to go, but also I want to thank the volunteer who brought us in, and they're going to take me to the airport in a few minutes. So it's sad that I have to leave, and it's been extremely important conference and experience, and so many things that I have learned here. Just two comments I wanted to make. One about the media, since I'm a journalist, and I heard, I think, Ziad talking about it, and Mr. Kobi. How important is the media role in covering conflicts or sometimes ignoring a conflict? And I think that we all sometimes restricted by self-censorship, by editorial line, by who owns our station. So we tend sometimes not to cover a conflict. And I always say that you won't be accused of bias if you stand up for injustice wherever it is, whether it's in Palestine, in Sudan, in Tibet, in Burma, wherever it is. I think we need to speak up, and sometimes we don't, because we're always afraid that we're going to be accused of biases. So maybe for the panel, I don't know when next time we can explore more of the role of the media, and this is probably will also help into the point that Mr. Rothschild yesterday raised about how to influence public opinion. You can't find a better advocate than the media to influence the public opinion, and we see that in the United States, as most of us who live there, I can see how the media influence even where the president is going to go for holiday, as we have seen after this oil spill in the Gulf Coast. And from the insistence of telling President Obama he has to go to Florida, he is going to Florida. So just to give you a little example of how powerful is the media, you don't need to know that. A second point that we talk about, the role of NGOs and civil societies that we haven't talked about. I spent last summer, actually, I'm talking here as a Palestinian who grew up in Gaza under occupation. I'm not talking as a journalist. I spent part of the summer last year at Fletcher School of Public Diplomacy, talking about how to foster a better understanding between people occupied and occupier through non-violence. And I think the theme that we got in the last 2 days, that the military option is it's not a viable one, it's not valid. And therefore, I think all of us have interest of trying to bring people together through a non-violent mean. And although we have a romantic idea, and I'm one of them who grew up in Gaza, about the armed struggle concept, actually statistics shows the opposite, that for every 26% of armed conflict in the world, the success of non-violent resolution to a conflict is 58%. And we talked about the people power in the Philippines, we talked about the Orange Revolution in the Ukraine, and I think for us here, we need to talk, and for the NGO in particular, we need to raise the question of non-violence. And in Ramallah, there is a village called Balain, and very often it's not really covered in the media because, again, we're interested in bad news because bad news make headlines. If a suicide bomber killed people, then it's a headline. But if you have somebody that doing work like you guys doing, nobody's interested. So the idea for us is how to make these stories sexy. How can we sell them on television? How can we make the audience interested and have a stake in actually covering these stories? And I think this is an important point about how to make a picture of Mahatma Gandhi is as attractive or more attractive than Che Guevara. And I think I would like to, especially the people who specialize in NGO work and civil society, to support a project like the Balayin and non-violence, and to draw more attention to it, although some we have seen in the Israeli media and the Arab media, but to take it to a different level of how can we support the concept itself and how to make it workable, especially among young people. Sorry, I have to leave, so I wish you all the best, and we will keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. I'm glad you like Omar Sharif. As you know, he's Egyptian, and actually he's a great fan of the Dominican Republic. I saw him last week, and I said, is it nice? Because he was here last year, and he said, yes, it's beautiful. I said, what do you mean? The women? He said, no, in my age, women and men are beautiful in the Dominican. So let's go to Farida now. So I will briefly introduce her. She's a founder of the Rothstein Cultural Magazine, spends all her professional career on media. She's a media guru, and she is also an advisor and consultant to a number of TV and magazines in Latin America.
Es un honor estar aquí, señor presidente. Nuevamente lo felicito por esta iniciativa. Yo creo que la paz es un gesto político y en ese sentido se construye. Y creo que efectivamente estamos aquí luego de la derrota, en definitiva, de estos intentos por décadas, por más de 6 décadas. Y creo que hoy estamos ante la obligación ética, moral, de ver de qué manera logramos entre todas las voluntades confluir, ayudar para poner fin a un conflicto que creo que es de los más antiguos, sin duda, ¿no? De los que se arrastran. Yo provengo de un país, como lo dije ayer, donde está la colectividad palestina más grande del mundo fuera de la del Medio Oriente. Soy parte de esa colectividad, pero hablo no solo por mis orígenes palestinos y sirios, hablo como una ciudadana, una mujer humanista, una mujer que ha también luchado en las guerras de su tiempo, una mujer de su tiempo, de mi tiempo, con el cual he compartido luchas con mis amigos y amigas judíos. Juntos pasamos la represión en la dictadura de Pinochet, con esos amigos y amigas judíos. Juntos vivimos el exilio. Juntos de regreso a Chile salimos a las calles muchas veces para protestar por determinadas acciones, ¿no?, que ocurrían en Palestina, en los territorios ocupados. Y en ese sentido, la primera reflexión es de qué manera podemos en nuestros respectivos países, yendo directamente a la pregunta de este panel, para confluir, para ayudar a que la sociedad civil pueda tener un rol más activo en esto. Hay sociedades, hay países donde su sociedad civil es más fuerte, en otras no es tan fuerte. Y en ese sentido creo que podríamos ser más amplios, y yo creo, en el caso chileno, dada la gran fuerza que tiene esta comunidad palestina, la existencia de de intelectuales académicos israelíes con una visión bastante amplia, con esa visión de los años 70 que hizo que muchos pensáramos, ¿no?, tanto palestinos como judíos, que era posible convivir en paz, utopía que hoy día se ve en el suelo, que no existe, donde una gran mayoría de la opinión pública en Israel pensaba que era fundamental la paz con los palestinos y creía en los dos estados. Hoy día eso ha habido un retroceso, y por eso creo que hemos retrocedido en términos de la paz, porque hoy día esa mayoría que quería la paz en Israel y en Palestina, insisto, hoy día es una minoría. Entonces tenemos que educar para la paz, y para educar para la paz en nuestros respectivos países creo que iniciativas como confluir pequeños grupos, en el caso chileno, donde hay intelectuales académicos de origen israelí y palestinos, el poder en conjunto, ¿no?, hacer estos llamados seminarios, encuentros, para empezar a educar para la paz en nuestros respectivos países, por un lado, y por otro para poder incidir a nivel de nuestros respectivos gobiernos, ¿no?, en el sentido de que apoyen determinadas iniciativas, se integren a foros internacionales o lleven determinadas posturas surgidas de esas instancias. Yo creo que el camino es largo, pero creo que vale la pena recorrerlo. Sin duda el rol de la sociedad civil y de estas instancias a que me refiero pueden ser muy importantes. Yo quiero solo señalar que soy una convencida de que es posible que podamos convivir en paz, que es posible que podamos convivir en dos estados, que es posible que seamos capaces de erradicar los integrismos, pero también soy una convencida de que esos integrismos han surgido a la luz, al calor de la derrota de nuestras políticas. Al no lograr soluciones de paz, hemos alimentado que esos terrorismos surjan efectivamente como alternativa, que esos integrismos surjan como alternativa, por lo tanto una responsabilidad de cada uno de nosotros. Solo quiero terminar señalando que cuando estuve en los territorios ocupados en Israel, el año 2006, en medio de la guerra, visité la Universidad de Belén, por ejemplo, y conversé con los jóvenes palestinos que estaban en la Universidad de Belén. Esos jóvenes palestinos no tenían futuro, no veían futuro. Ya cruzar los checkpoints y pasar por la humillación de ser revisados, de no saber si podían o no irse de Belén, era algo terrible. Ver ese muro que sonrojaba a las académicas israelíes que me acompañaban, que eran activistas por la paz, incluso las sonrojaban a ellas, era algo que me demostró que si bien hay minorías, esas minorías tienen que ser pronto transformadas en mayoría, porque esa zona ya no resiste más tensión. Quiero reiterar de que haremos los esfuerzos efectivamente para construir diálogos para la paz, formar, educar para la paz, ya sea a través de esta sociedad civil, de las universidades, de los debates, etc. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Farida, very much. So Farida sees that education for peace is a must, and also creating more groups for peace, more individual initiative, lobby government to support those initiatives. We have a long way to go, but we must stay steady for peace. Totally agree, Farida, and you're absolutely right. We need more individual initiative. We have obviously with us here a friend and somebody who's made one that has made a mark in peace, Yussi Billen, with his Geneva initiative, Education for Peace. We have a guru here, Dr. Shibli Talhami, who teaches on peace through the Anwar Sadat Chair for Peace. So we have many people here that can certainly, I think, take your ideas forward and make them happen. So with that, I want to turn the floor now to the mic to the floor, see your questions. Please introduce yourself and tell me who your question for. Sir? I think we have some mics there on the floor.
Permítame en primer lugar felicitar en la persona de nuestro querido presidente a todos los padres hoy que en República Dominicana se celebra ese Día de los Padres y estamos aquí juntos. Mi más entusiasta felicitación. Yo soy José Atías Juan, presidente del Club Libanés, Sirio y Palestino en República Dominicana, el lugar donde se aglutinan la mayoría de los árabes, los dominicos árabes residentes aquí en el país. Luego de escuchar a los distinguidos panelistas de ayer y en el día de hoy, en las cuales todos de una forma u otra han esbozado posiciones basadas en la experiencia que cada uno ha tenido en el ámbito de sus respectivas participaciones en otros cónclaves con similares o muy parecidas agendas a las que hoy agotamos. Mi parecer es que siempre se ha partido de una búsqueda de paz en momentos difíciles, en lo que se ha buscado el cese al fuego en unas ocasiones, en otras para evitar más ocupaciones de territorios. Casi todas se han intentado en momentos muy especiales para ambos pueblos. En muchas oportunidades, estos acuerdos han incluido situaciones que han afectado a una tercera nación, al Líbano, país que ha sido afectado inmisericordiamente por esta lucha entre palestinos e israelitas. Hoy, este nuevo intento de reflexión debe movernos a una esperanza, pues tenemos un presidente en los Estados Unidos y un presidente en el Caribe con un liderazgo muy bien ganado, que están interesados plenamente en ese sentido. El presidente dominicano ha manifestado su deseo de conformar un frente latinoamericano para luchar por esta causa. Tenemos que ver esto como un ente multiplicador para aglutinar todas esas naciones en este buen intento. Mire, tenemos un ingrediente, el de Irán, que no debemos perder de vista. Y muchas otras situaciones que, por no hacer más larga esta intervención, me permito dejar de lado. Es necesario que esos dos pueblos, israelí y palestino, dejen de lado las diferencias religiosas, geográficas, raciales y afronten la cruda realidad que le ha tocado vivir. Ninguno de los dos pueblos vive en paz. En ese trajinar conflictivo han arrastrado a otros pueblos, perjudicando a sus habitantes, destruyendo su infraestructura. En Israel, Palestina y Líbano apenas reside un % mínimo de sus nacionales, producto de una diáspora permanente que emigra cada día a diferentes naciones del mundo en búsqueda de lugares menos fallidos donde educar a su descendencia y trabajar en paz. Si estos pueblos no buscan alternativas de paz en beneficio de la humanidad a la que tanto afecta esta amenaza permanente, que lo hagan entonces en procura de brindarle a sus conciudadanos la paz y la prosperidad que merecen en sus propios pueblos. No se puede festinar ningún intento, pues ¿quién puede predecir que este no sea el momentum que Dios le tenga reservado a estos pueblos para animar a sus líderes a morigerar sus posiciones y arribar a nuevos acuerdos con respeto y con carácter de continuidad en el tiempo? Otros pueblos del mundo con problemas históricos y geográficos tan grandes como el que nos ocupa han encontrado soluciones a sus crisis tras acuerdos serios y desprendidos de egoísmos. En Israel tenemos poblaciones palestinas dispersas por lo menos en 3 grandes bolsones territoriales. No sé mucho de este tema, pero pienso que si ambos pueblos concentraran a todos sus ciudadanos en un área independiente cada uno, la situación de Estado sería más viable, más controlada, más segura, a menos costo y más manejable para ambos gobiernos y para la autodeterminación de cada pueblo. Y quizás de esa forma pudiesen coexistir 2 estados en ese mismo territorio. Es necesario que este deseo de ayudar de nuestro presidente encuentre un eco más efectivo en los gobiernos latinoamericanos, norteamericanos, europeos y de los Emiratos Árabes, junto a los actores palestinos e israelíes. Estoy convencido que esa unión conjunta de buenas voluntades va a coronarse con el éxito, que será un triunfo para la humanidad y en especial para esos pueblos que por cientos de años han mantenido un estado de incertidumbre y de dolor constante. Felicitamos una vez más a nuestro presidente por esta iniciativa humanitaria, la que estamos seguros que el Señor Todopoderoso coronará con el éxito. Muchas gracias.
And willingness to take this into Latin America and bringing the globe together. Next, can you please, just if you have a question, this was obviously a long comment, so if you have, just introduce yourself and again, say who the question for. So, gentlemen, go ahead.
Buenos días. Lo lamento, pero más que una cuestión es una oferta para el presidente Fernández y para Funglode. Me llamo Diego de Ojeda, soy el director de una institución de diplomacia pública española que se llama Casa Sefarat Israel, que tiene una institución hermana, que es Casa Árabe. Y digamos que ambas instituciones funcionan en un nivel que ni es plenamente el oficial, gobierno a gobierno, que me parece un elemento absolutamente indispensable de cualquier esfuerzo de paz. El rol de la sociedad civil es muy importante, como hemos estado escuchando, pero si no hay impulso político por parte de los gobiernos, de la comunidad internacional, esos esfuerzos se quedan en el terreno de lo micro. Así que Casa Sefarat Israel y Casa Árabe no estamos en ese nivel de gobierno a gobierno, pero tampoco estamos en el nivel de la ONG, de las instituciones o fundaciones privadas que hacen ayuda al desarrollo o que trabajan haciendo esfuerzos por la paz. También tenemos mucho de eso en España. La Agencia Española de Cooperación al Desarrollo financia una pléyade de ONGs y de iniciativas de ONGs y de otro tipo de fundaciones muy encaminadas tanto al desarrollo económico palestino como a esfuerzos directamente relacionados con la paz. Pero digamos que en respuesta a la invitación de Funglode y del presidente Fernández y a la iniciativa de tratar de articular un esfuerzo suplementario viniendo de República Dominicana y de América Latina más en general, quería simplemente confirmar que toda esta ingente actividad desplegada por el presidente Zapatero y por el ministro Moratinos está al servicio y plenamente dispuesta a cooperar con cualquier iniciativa que venga proveniente de Funglode y de República Dominicana, tanto en el aspecto oficial, que el presidente Fernández lo conoce perfectamente, como en estos otros dos niveles más semioficiales o puramente asociativos. Gracias.
Thank you, President. The first, excuse my language, so my friend Dr. Jawad Anani, he will translate my question. اليوم على أرض فلسطين أو على أرض إسرائيل، على الرغم أن الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين يعيشون على أرض واحدة. Dr. Jawad?
But I think the first sentence he said was that since Palestinians and Israelis share the same geography, the same space, and live on the same land.
فعلى الرغم أن الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين يعيشون في منطقة واحدة وفي أرض واحدة، ولكن الآن أقول أمام الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين أن لا صلة تقريبا، لا صلة إطلاقا بين المجتمع الفلسطيني والمجتمع الإسرائيلي بسبب الجدار الذي بني بين الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين، وبسبب قرارات الحكومة الإسرائيلية يمنع أي إسرائيلي أن يصل إلى المدن الفلسطينية مثلما يمنع أي فلسطيني أن يصل إلى إسرائيل.
Well, since both Palestinians, although Palestinians and Israelis share the same land and the same space, but actually they are completely separated from each other, and the main reason is the wall that was built by Israel and also by the dictates of the Israeli government, which does not allow either Palestinians to move and get in touch with their Israeli counterparts, and the same applies also to the denial of Palestinians the permits to go and talk to their Israeli counterparts.
والصلة بين الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين هي صلة محدودة، ربما بين المسؤولين الفلسطينيين والمسؤولين الإسرائيليين كما جرى في المفاوضات السابقة، واليوم نشهد تراجع أن هنالك مفاوضات غير مباشرة بين الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين عبر الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية.
Although there are some contacts which are of very limited nature, that is confined to the political negotiations that take place between Israeli and Palestinian officials, but recently we have witnessed that even such an event is not possible because they are talking to each other through indirect negotiations, or what they call proximity negotiations, through the American intermediary.
وكما هو واضح أن الفجوة كبيرة بين الفهم الرسمي الفلسطيني وبين الفهم الرسمي الإسرائيلي حول قضايا الصراع، حول قضايا اللاجئين، القدس، المستوطنات، الحدود إلى آخره.
And we have also found out that even there are categorically different interpretations of the basic negotiation items, such as differences over the understanding of refugees and borders and Jerusalem and other cardinal issues which are being contested and negotiated.
ولذلك تبرز الأهمية إلى دور مؤسسات المجتمع المدني لدى الجانبين الفلسطيني والإسرائيلي من أجل تجسير هذه الفجوات بين المجتمعين الفلسطيني والإسرائيلي، بين الشعبين الفلسطيني والإسرائيلي.
Therefore, with such a backdrop, I think it becomes imperative for the role of civil society organizations to really bridge this communication gap and somehow create the conducive environment for both Israeli society and Palestinian society to engage in direct and exchange and conversations.
ولا يوجد خيار آخر بين الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين سوى أن يتعايشا مع بعضهم البعض، أن يبحثا عن وسائل التعايش على الأرض الواحدة، على المنطقة الواحدة.
Therefore, Palestinians and Israelis must live up to the fact that they have to live with each other, they have to coexist with each other, and they have to learn how to translate such coexistence into a life that is mutually beneficial for both sides.
بين الشعبين، بين مؤسسات المجتمع المدني، بين الطرفين هنالك تجربتين ممكن التحدث عنهم أو لفت النظر إليهم.
In this context, I would like to highlight two important developments or experiments which I will mention to you as I will soon. So go ahead.
التجربة الأولى أحد أبطالها موجود معنا، السيد يوسي بلن على الجانب الإسرائيلي والسيد ياسر عبد ربه عن الجانب الفلسطيني. والتجربة الثانية أشار إليها المحاضر أو الذي قدم مداخلته السيد من إسرائيل، تجربة عامي أيالون من الجانب الإسرائيلي وسيرين سيبي عن الجانب الفلسطيني.
Well, the first experience pertains to to the experience of one of the people who are present here, Mr. Yossi Belin, and his Palestinian counterpart, Mr. Yasser Abd Rabbo, through their Geneva initiative. And the other one is, I think you're referring to Kobe, right? Experience regarding the Ayel Alon.
عامي أيالون.
Ali Ayalon, and we went together with Mr. Serin Nusayba,
رئيس جامعة القدس.
who is now the president of Jerusalem University.
ولكن يعني دعني أقول أنا كمراقب ومدقق وصحفي متابع لا أجد أن هنالك صلات جوهرية حقيقية ملموسة بين المجتمع الفلسطيني والمجتمع الإسرائيلي اليوم لأسباب عديدة.
I really, other than those, unique experiences which I just mentioned, I don't see much of communication and interaction taking place between the Palestinian and Israeli peoples on both sides.
ومن هنا تبرز أهمية هذا المؤتمر وهذه الفكرة النبيلة التي جمعتنا هنا بعيدا آلاف الأميال عن المنطقة العربية، عن فلسطين وإسرائيل، لأن يكون لهذا المؤتمر لمبادرة الرئيس والسادة الذين شاركونه في هذه المبادرة. تبرز أهمية هذا المؤتمر من أجل إيجاد الآلية بين الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين، وخصوصا بين مؤسسات المجتمع المدني الفلسطيني والإسرائيلي بهذا الاتجاه.
Thus, I find that this experience in which we are engaged today to be extremely important and valuable in bringing the two people together, that we are meeting about 16,000 miles away from where the action is, and with the encouragement and patronage of His Excellency President Fernandez, and through his own initiative on civil action, I believe that we are really pursuing the right course of action.
ولذلك اقتراحي المباشر على المؤتمر ورئاسة المؤتمر وهيئة المؤتمر أن يكون هنالك حوار بين الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين بذات المهنة الواحدة.
Therefore, I have a specific proposal to make here, and namely that people of the same profession, people who have the same interests, should engage in direct dialogue with each other. And I think you're talking about professional and
بين البرلمانيين الفلسطينيين والبرلمانيين الإسرائيليين.
Well, I am going to cite examples. One of them is for both Israeli and Palestinian parliamentarians to talk to each other.
بين الأحزاب السياسية الإسرائيلية والأحزاب السياسية الفلسطينية.
The same applies to political parties on both sides.
بين مجالس طلبة الجامعات الإسرائيلية ومجالس طلبة الجامعات الفلسطينية.
In student councils, university student councils on both sides, in the Palestinian universities and Israeli universities.
بين النقابات الفلسطينية والنقابات الإسرائيلية.
And also a conversation among or between Israeli unions and professional societies, as well as with their counterparts on the Palestinian side.
وهكذا يمكن لهذا المؤتمر لهذا المحفل أن يؤدي دوره النبيل بإيجاد الصلة لتجاوز الجدار العازل بين الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين.
Thus, this respectable forum will contribute to overpassing or succeeding over exceeding the hurdle which has been created by the wall, and it creates people-to-people dialogue.
ويعني يمكن أن تكون هذه الأفكار هي تطبيق لمبادرة فخامة الرئيس وهيئة المؤتمر وجمهورية الدومينيكان في أن يؤدوا الدور النبيل الذي برز منهم بالفعل لإيجاد الصلة والصيغة والعلاقة والتطلع من أجل السلام بين الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين في منطقتنا.
What I have suggested actually is a practical or what I call pragmatic embodiment of the initiative of His Excellency the President, and also it is a reflection and a practical reflection of what we have been discussing here in this beautiful country.
واقتراحي الأخير والنقطة الأخيرة في لقائنا المقبل إذا جرى هناك لقاء مقبل إن شاء الله أن يتم دعوة الرئيس الفلسطيني ورئيس الوزراء الإسرائيلي لهذا المحفل من أجل الاستماع للرؤية ووجهة النظر الفلسطينية واستماع لوجهة النظر والرؤية الفلسطينية. وشكرا فخامة الرئيس وسيد رئيس المؤتمر.
Therefore, I will make the suggestion that if we are going to meet here again, and I hope that we will meet again here next year, for instance, that an invitation should be issued to both the Palestinian president and the Israeli prime minister to be here, and we would listen to them directly and probably put them to the test of bringing our hopes to reality.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any more questions? Great. So, no more questions. So, in conclusion, I would just say that certainly we can see from our distinguished panelists and from the floor the need for strengthening the role of NGOs, which many analysts see to be more trusted than governments. Opinion surveys show that in Germany in 2000, people trusted the decisions and had more confidence in Greenpeace more than they had in their own government, for example. So NGOs undoubtedly have much more to do, particularly from their ability to strengthen the role of soft powers, which they bring in very well together to influence government and decision makers and policy planners. We heard a lot about the role of people to people, and for some of you, be interesting maybe to know that People to People was founded first on September 11 in 1956 at the White House by President Dwight Eisenhower. The role of People to People is to bring public diplomacy between nations, alongside between the formal diplomacy between nations. And certainly that role is one that we all need to see in our modern world. In conclusion, I would say that it is about time for us collectively to build together a global peace movement that focuses on perhaps the Middle East to start with. So this movement will hopefully be able to support the great ideas and the great initiatives that comes from Kobe, from Farida, from Eldor, from Yusibel, and from each and every one of you here who's giving contribution, efforts, and time to peace. And it is actually the civil society that can make a difference. If you think how we moved from a smoking world in less than a decade ago to a totally non-smoking world almost everywhere, that is you, by the way. That's the civil society. If you think about how we create sustainable tourism and ecotourism and green planet, that is you. It's not so much the government, it is really you. You who have made governments adopt those policies and support them everywhere. So the first thing is to say, believe in you, let's all do it hand in hand. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Panelists. I just give the mic to Mr. Bannon to say final words. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, today we have realized once more that public opinion, we have to act on public opinion to make the things moving. We will not achieve anything if we cannot change or make better, more realistic the public opinion, Israeli and Palestinian. We have to make that every Palestinian know better his neighbor, as Arafat was saying, his cousin. And we have to make the Israeli knowing better the Palestinian. The civil society have a huge role to play, and we have seen that it is several initiatives are taken. And to answer to our friend, we in Switzerland, in Lausanne, every year we are putting scholarship children, Palestinian and Israeli, together for 1 month. We bring them, students, doctors, children, lawyers. But what it's that Nadia thought before she left, it is the media don't report on it, that the public opinion know all this initiative, realize that things are possible. So I think we have to keep working, going initiative more and more, but we have to mobilize the media, and we think we need an action program vis-à-vis the media. Thank you.